the Future podcast is brought to you by Aberhart Ag Solutions. Join us as we talk to top entrepreneurs in the agricultural space about their methods of obtaining success in their endeavors. And now, your host, Terry Aberhart.
All right, so here we are, very excited to be hosting our first Growing the Future podcast. My name's Terry Aberhart with Aberhart Farms, Sure Growth Solutions, and Aberhart Ag Solutions. So very excited to be hosting the podcast for the first time. Brother Dan's been doing a rocking job and setting the bar really high. So we're hoping to have some fun and do really well. And I'm very, very excited to have our first guest as Rob Saik, a great friend, someone I've done a lot of business with through Agri-Trend over the years, and the consulting work, and helps us out on the farm as an advisor. So really excited to have Rob Saik along with us here today, and my son Holden is going to be helping us out, providing some younger opinions or some different insight here and there, hopefully. So yeah, let's, Rob, introduce yourself a bit. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, good morning. Great to be on your podcast, Terry. I'm Robert Saik. You find me today in Olds, Alberta. My background is all agriculture, growing up in northeastern Alberta on a farm. I founded many different agricultural companies and ventures. Probably the most notable would be the Agri-Trend group. However, I'm involved in several new startups right now. I really am passionate about advocating for agriculture and creating more awareness about what farmers do. Just love to work in our sector. Have had lots of opportunity to speak out on behalf of agricultural science and the work that we do as farmers, both at the political and at the public level. So really looking forward to covering off some of those topics with you this morning and today on this podcast. So over to you, Holden.
I'm Holden Aberhart. I farm with my dad, Terry, and this is the first time I've been on a podcast, and I'm super excited to be here.
Cool.
Good to see you again, Holden.
I think at some point through the podcast, Holden's going to be displaying some techno video skills that he's been learning on the iPad Pro. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, I think there's lots of exciting things we want to talk about with you, Rob. You've done a lot of amazing things in agriculture and with entrepreneurism. That's kind of a bit of the theme of the podcast is entrepreneurism and growing the future. And I know there's some super exciting things that you're working on right now. So why don't you tell us about what you're working on today and what's filling your mind full of excitement?
Well, I think we'll start off with the book. I published a book in 2013, 2014, a booklet. It was about 55 pages called The Agriculture Manifesto, 10 Key Drivers That Will Shape Agriculture in the Next Decade. That book that was written in 2013, 14 ended up being a best of Amazon books, and about 16,000 copies have made their way into the marketplace one way or the other. And that book was very accurate. It was profoundly prophetic in terms of where agriculture is going. And so what I'm working on right now, Terry, is a new book. It's called Food 5.0, How We Feed the Future. And it's a full-length book, over 200 pages. Been working on it, and it's designed to be read by urbanites. So I really wrote it for a 33-year-old mom living in Calgary or Toronto who isn't connected to agriculture but would like to learn more about how their food is growing. And then, so I take you through 5 iterations of agriculture. I take you through agriculture 1.0, which is the era of muscle, agriculture 2, which is the era of machine, agriculture 3, the era of chemistry, agriculture 4, which is the era of genetic engineering, and agriculture 5, which is convergence. And that's the area we live in today, we're all converging technology together on the farm. So that's what I'm working on first of all, Terry. It's a book, and it'll be released on August the 13th. And it will be released in conjunction with my opening keynote speech at the Ag Smart show here in Olds. So on August 13th, Food 5.0, How We Feed the Future. Sure would like everybody to go on to Amazon that day and buy 2 copies, one for yourself and one for your city cousin to give away. And I hope everybody enjoys the read. The beginning is kind of a journey of history. The end of it takes us through very quickly to all of the technologies mashing together on the farm. So that's what I'm working on. That's one thing.
So what, just on the theme of convergence nowadays, what are some of the highlights there? I mean, I think there's some really amazing things going on. So what's that for you?
Well, I think we can all remember when auto steer was introduced into the farm. And auto steer really was about guiding a tractor in a straight line, GPS. So we needed GPS to guide that tractor. It wasn't long after that we added GIS, Geographic Information Systems, onto the GPS. And after that, computers came along, and then more and more stuff started to go to and from the tractor cab back to the planter and stuff like that. And that really is what convergence is all about. I don't think you can talk about DOT, for example, the robotic platform I'm involved in. I don't think you can talk about DOT without understanding convergence, because robotics today in agriculture is all about mechanization. We have to have the mechanics still, but it's about guidance, GPS, GIS. It's about sensor technology, LiDAR, radar. It's about computers, very advanced computers on the robot. It's about adding additional sensory devices to this. It's about the data being compiled, the data being pulled off, the analysis of that data. How do you make sense of it? What do you do with it? So that's convergence. Convergence is all of the stuff going around us today that doesn't exist in isolation anymore. It converges all as one. And it gives us a little bit of insight as to why things are moving as fast as they are. As they're moving so fast because things are converging.
Yeah, it's crazy how rapid the change is right now. It's very exciting. Cool. So what else is going on?
Well, on the heels of that little rant is DOT. So on December 31st, I completed the transition of Agri-Trend and Agri-Data to Trimble. That was done on December 31st, 2018. And then on January 8th, I sat down with Norbert Bugeaud, inventor of DOT and owner of Seedmaster, and agreed to take on the commercialization of DOT. So Leah Olson has been CEO of DOT Technology Corp. So she's involved in manufacturing and the implement partner relationships for DOT, and they wanted somebody to head the commercialization side. So as of January 8th, I became the CEO of DOT Farm Solutions to take the autonomous platform forward into the marketplace. And that's a long range job, Terry. That's a job that will take many years to work through. And so, I had a 7-day retirement there for a while. I was, good start to the year. But anyway, so I've done the DOT thing, and then I'm sure we'll talk about a new startup that is being launched on July 16th called AgVisor Pro. So other than that, doing nothing much.
For sure. So just the average day in a serial entrepreneur. Hey, so this DOT thing. I mean, is something that we're quite interested in on the farm and in agriculture. I think that I've always said that I've always believed in the last few years that autonomy is going to come to the farm, and it's going to come much quicker than we think, much like any technology. And I remember a couple of years ago having a chat with at our advisory meetings with the farm team that we do yearly, and talking about the disruption of technology in industries, and saying that, autonomy, I believe autonomy is going to come much quicker than we think into agriculture. And it's probably going to come from an area that we don't expect. It's not necessarily going to come from John Deere Case. And then it was literally a couple months later where DOT was announced, and it was really cool. So we've been kind of involved in following that. And I think there's a lot of challenges there, but there's also a lot of opportunities. Exciting to see some of the things that are starting to evolve as this is being brought to market.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate statement. I like what you said there, that autonomy was going to come from where you didn't expect it. There's lots of people pursuing robots in agriculture. No shortage of companies. Most of them are small platforms. Most of them are small robots dealing in the areas of greenhouses or vineyards. And DOT is exactly the opposite. DOT is targeted for broad acre agriculture. DOT, she's 175 horsepower. We refer to DOT as she because DOT is named after Norbert Bugeaud's mother, Dorothy. So we call DOT DOT. And DOT's got 175 horsepower Tier 4 Cummins engine. It's got 4 hydrostatically independently driven tires. Like I mentioned, the computer's on it, and it's a U-shaped platform. So it's a U-shaped design that's capable of clipping and docking with one unit, like a seeder, unclipping and going and clipping in with a sprayer. It can unclip from the sprayer, go to a fertilizer spreader. So DOT has the ability to have a lot of flexibility in terms of utility. A lot of idiots there, but anyways, So DOT has the opportunity to be a piece of equipment, a drivetrain, a powertrain, an autonomous, 100% autonomous powertrain that can go from device to device to device. So keep working through the whole year. And of course, if you could have on your farm, Terry, you would need to have something like about 5 or 6 DOTs on your farm. And that would change the face of how things are happening on your farm.
Yeah, I think I really love that story and the marketing behind it. Obviously, the DOT platform and the C.Run kind of campaign. But when we heard Norbert tell that story about his mother, and he talked about how efficient she was, and he told this story. I remember telling us about how his mom, when sweeping the floor, she cut a little hole in the floor underneath the sink and put a little pail in the basement underneath there, and she just sweep it into the hole, and just little things like that made things so efficient. And Norbert's just a brilliant mind, brilliant guy. A lot of the things that he's thought of are very simple, but also tie in a lot of new technology or new ways to look at things. And so I just think that's a really cool story behind that all too.
I should probably highlight the fact that the seeder for DOT that was in seeding this year's crops with the farmers that we were working with this year, that seeder was referred to as a SR, which is a single rank, Terry. And that seeder is one rank, 15-inch on center, but it's got these clearing devices, these trash clearing devices to get the crop residue out of the way. That worked so very well. I'm really excited to see the outcome of what happened there. We were in very heavy trash conditions, and that was seeding very, very well. And on top of DOT is the Ultra Pro seeding system. And the Ultra Pro seeding system was just this winter tested by PAMI, the Prairie Agricultural Machinery Institute. And the variation between runs on that Ultra Pro system is down to as low as 3%. So you've got a system that provides very, very accurate seed placement and seed distribution. And that's going to really play well, I think, with farmers as they continue to face expensive seed costs. We think that DOT not only could plant the crop autonomously, but the seeding system that we have brought out for it, the SR 300 bushel SR single rank 30 foot, will allow DOT to place that seed very, very, very cleanly, very, very precisely. So that's going to be interesting to watch, Terry.
Yeah, for sure. So Holden, what do you think about all this robots and autonomy and
Yeah,
agriculture?
Holden.
I mean, if you're going to be thinking about being a farmer in 10 years from now, are you going to be doing it all in the age of muscle back in 1.0 like Rob was talking about, or how do you think these robots and autonomy is going to fit in?
I think it will fit in nicely. Like, it's a lot easier for, like, if you're working all day, it's probably a lot easier because since it goes on by itself and drives and seeds, that you will get more time to do other stuff. Like when I was helping my dad build the or get the seeder ready, it would have been a lot nicer to have one thing already seeding and we doing something else, so then you can do things a lot more faster.
So what are you going to do with all that extra time that the robots give you?
You could, like, if you have kids, spend more time with them, or could have more free time to do different stuff, or have like hobbies that you can do.
For sure. And actually that's one of the themes that we talked about when thinking about the benefits of this type of farming system, is actually changing that culture of agriculture where we're worked to the bone, and working so hard and no time for anything. And my dad has a great saying where, in his age where he grew up, his comment was, whoever worked the hardest got ahead. Whoever, plowed, spend another hour in the field plowing or seeding or whatever it is, it kind of came down to how hard you were willing to work. And now that's not going to be what gets you ahead. It's about how well you run your business and manage things, and you got to have the knowledge and planning and all that stuff, right? And so I think this is one of the things that, looking in the big picture, this type of technology and system can allow you to, operate at times when you don't always have to have everybody there. And I think, people are still struggling. I think we're having these conversations. They look at the DOT and the parts of the DOT, the engine, the machine, the wheels, and they're trying to associate the value of the iron, so to speak. Really, the real value there is going to be the software and the technology and the intelligence that's built into the machine, so it can operate in a simple way and on its own. And it's a whole different platform from beginning to end than your traditional farm equipment setup.
Well, for sure. I think that's one of the biggest changes. And on social media, when we post about DOT, we get lots of questions around it, and a lot of questions tend to gravitate towards the technology side. And DOT has done the DOT team, DOT Tech Corp, has done a great job of pulling together some tremendous talent. I mean, if you go up into that second floor in Regina, there, I don't know, there's somewhere between 12 and 16 technicians working. And some of these young people are robotic champions. I mean, we've got a number of these guys that have worked together and have taken top honors in the North American Robotic Contest. So, I was getting hit up on Twitter the other day saying, what makes you believe that you guys can do this when the big guys haven't brought it out yet? And, well, that's the way anything's ever been done. It's always the small guys that do the innovation. It's always the small guys that crack the wicked problems and crack the code and bring it out. And, it's not the big guys that bring out innovation. John Deere's got a good air seeder, but it came from Conservapac, so it's these guys that these people in late places like Seedmaster DOT that buckle down and try to solve wicked problems. That's where it's always come from. That's how innovation happens.
For sure. So talking about innovation, I mean, even the way that we're recording this podcast with Zoom and video, kind of a live feel is a bit of a new innovation and something that we're using a lot more. And we're living in a much more visual world, especially with the younger generation like Holden that we've got here. They don't communicate and exchange information in the same way. And so this is more and more exciting tools and thinking about different ways to share communication. And I know, you're a big fan of Peter Diamandis. We'll probably talk about him a bit later. Read the book Abundance, and then read his next book, Bold, which is about creating exponential experiences through technology and the internet, and thinking about how to connect agriculture and connect ideas. And this is something that I know you've been working on, and you've got kind of an exciting development, or your next new venture in this area is really tying together those themes of leveraging the new way to communicate and leveraging those people that still have a lot of value to share, eh?
Yeah, thanks, Terry. I'm working on a new project right now called AgVisor Pro, Answers Now. And AgVisor Pro takes advantage of a lot of what we're using right now, which is connectivity. And AgVisor Pro is an idea that I've had for a while now to provide instantaneous connectivity between farmers and those in the agricultural sector to answer questions immediately. And so what does that look like? Well, when I built Agri-Trend, when we started to build Agri-Trend in 94, 95, started to sketch it out on paper, launched it in 97, Google didn't exist. Hotmail was just coming on. And so Agri-Trend was really built around a humanistic connectivity, a humanistic connection environment, a layer of humans. And I believe that human connection at the farm level is not going to go away. The problem is the number of humans that truly understand the problems that a farmer faces are declining. There's not more of them. There's fewer of them. And so the challenge is to shrink time and space in such a manner that a farmer could access the expertise that he needs in real time when he needs it. And so that's what AgVisor Pro is attempting to do. We're going to be launching AgVisor Pro at the Ag in Motion show on July 16th. AgVisor Pro will have farmers with their profiles on it. So you'll have your farm on there, Terry, and you'll have the kind of equipment you run, the kind of crops you grow, kind of the operations that you work with. And then on the other side, there'll be a whole series of agricultural experts, which would include independent experts, people like Tom Wolf. So Tom's a sprayer expert. You'll be able to access Tom. And Elaine Fraze, who's a family and human resource expert in the farming community. You'll be able to talk to Elaine. Terry Betker's coming on for farm business management. Or Steve Larock, you'll be able to access him for controlled traffic farming questions. So on one side, you got farmers, and the other side, you've got experts. Those are independent experts, but it could also be industry experts. There's nothing stopping you from instantly accessing DOT technicians, for example. So DOT technicians could be supported on AgVisor Pro. Company like Taurus might decide to list its reps on AgVisor Pro. And so you could have instantaneous connectivity. And then there's government and academic. And so we've got a guy like Scott Mears, who's the provincial entomologist for Alberta. And Scott's on AgVisor Pro. So you'd be able to access Scott. And also, farmers would be able to advise other farmers. So think of AgVisor Pro like the Uberization of knowledge and wisdom. And we've fused together the thinking in about 3 or 4 different platforms. If you think about it, we've done some matchmaking like Tinder or eHarmony. We've done a lot of Uberization where you can select your ride. So you can select a PhD level, a domain expert, a professional, industry expert. You can choose when you want to talk to them because they can make themselves available instantaneously to you. We are creating a community at AgVisor Pro called the Peer Garden. It's like a beer garden, and we will be hosting the Peer Garden this year at Ag in Motion, and we're also creating a community for conversation. And the areas we're supporting, Terry, would include like the cropping areas, livestock areas, human resources, farm business management. But one that really comes to heart is the mental health area. We have a lot of mental health stress at farm level. A lot of people are talking about it, but not many people have figured out how do you solve this problem. And so with AgVisor Pro, I'm trying to build a system that would allow a farmer to connect instantaneously with a professional mental health person in a secure, private, confidential environment, and have that cost picked up by some sponsor that I'm working on right now. So that's really important. And
Yeah, I really like the idea and the concept, and obviously you've been sharing some of this with me over the past few months or year or so, and now seeing it come together. Been playing around with it a bit. I think it's pretty simple, intuitive, and I really do believe, especially for the younger generation. Like I see our kids. I mean, they're not going to be going to the coffee shop and hearing the local rumors or maybe going into the dealership and hanging out there to learn about things. And so I think this is how they communicate, whether it's Snapchat or social media, other tools like that. Right. And I think, for somebody like Holden again in the future, you can be out you're going to be on your iPad, probably running those 5 or 6 dots, or your autonomous fleet doing all kinds of stuff. You're maybe editing the next podcast at the same time, and maybe you need to call somebody to fix a software problem on the machine, or maybe you need to reach out to Elaine Froze because you and me just had a big fight and you're stressed out and wondering how to deal with your dad, right? So what do you think about that, Holden?
I don't really know. I think I would like to grow up in a world where everything is just a lot easier to do.
It's not that easy to do right now, or what?
No, not really.
Pretty tough, eh? Pretty tough world to live in. Yeah, so that's really cool. I think, there's like you say, Rob, there's knowledge. There's people we know from being in the Agri-Trend group. There's some amazing minds there that just can never be replaced, right? And I think about how powerful that network was of sharing information and knowledge. And even for some of those people, whether it's archiving videos or presentations or research papers, could kind of live forever within a platform like this, live on forever and continue to generate value for agriculture into the future.
Yeah, that's really the thing, Terry. When you consider a guy like Dr. Ian Evans or even Elston Solberg, the real value those guys have is the wisdom that they can impart. And do we really need these guys on airplanes all the time for you to access them? And I understand that agriculture is a lot of information that's out there for free. I get that. But at the end of the day, I think that a farmer, before he makes a decision on a real important issue on his farm, he wants to talk to somebody real. He wants to talk to a human. So I talk about high tech and high touch. And for the foreseeable future, even as agriculture gets more high tech, like DOT, when you have an issue, I think you need to talk to a high touch person who can help that. And what I'm trying to do is to shrink time and space and Uberize that so a farmer can feel really good about accessing these people for a 10 or 20 minute session, maybe an hour session to solve a problem. So the technology we built inside of AgVisor Pro includes audio, so you can just talk, or screen-to-screen sharing. You can see the guy's screen, or video to video like we're doing right now. You can take a picture of a leaf or a bug or a disease and share that instantaneously with the guy on the other end or a lady on the other end. So we've done, I think, a pretty good job of pulling together some really cool technologies, and this is just the beginning. So Terry, I'm feeling like I felt at the early days of Agri-Trend when I was coming out with Agri-Trend, and I had more people tell me, "Nah, this is never going to work. You're crazy, Saik. It's not going to work." And I was up at 1:40 a.m. last night. I had butterflies. It's like 52 days away from launch or whatever, and I got butterflies. We're going to be bringing something out that was in here, and now I've got a team of Miranda Carr and Patrick Walter. I've assembled him, and I've got advisors and programmers all over Calgary, Seattle, and Vietnam hitting away on this thing. So I've got a lot of resources that have been expended to bring this off the ground, and I got to tell you, I'm excited about it. I'm excited about how it fits together with DOT. Everything seems to be coming together in a new way, a new way of doing things. So it's cool.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I'm very impressed by the team that you've collected again for this new venture. Had the opportunity to kind of see the inside of that on a call the other day, and I like where it's going. It's a concept that I've had a similar thought in my head, but you've really, I think, figured out how to commoditize it. And this is actually an area where we've struggled with, even within our own consulting business, with someone like Justin Cleaver, who's a really, really excellent GIS guy and really good with the monitors. And a lot of times we get calls from other coaches and other clients that aren't in our client base for monitor support, at 11 o'clock at night or midnight on a Sunday or whatever it may be, because the guy's in the field and he wants to get his unit going, and the reality is, I just kind of figured this out the other day. On a 15 or 16 hour shift on our 80-foot drill, we're putting in about $50,000 worth of inputs in a day, right? So when that machine isn't running, it's worth a lot. So if you can make a phone call to somebody like Justin and talk to him for 20 minutes, and he can fix your little software issue or tell you how to punch a couple buttons on your controller and get you going in 20 minutes, that's worth a lot. And so someone like Justin would take a lot of those calls at different times. And a lot of times we just end up, it's hard to charge for. It's hard to, because you don't have a formal relationship, and you just kind of end up doing it because you're nice. But now here's a formal tool that for those wizards like that can create some value. And hey, when you're sitting on the side of the field on a Saturday at 9 o'clock and the dealership is closed and you can't get a hold of anybody, I mean, I think most people would be really happy to
well, if you're in that situation, Terry, and you can't get your controller working and it's late at night and you can get a hold of a Justin, I think it's fair that Justin be able to help another farmer in real time. And we've created the system to make sure that it's all clean, the transaction's clean, the farmer is able to get the answer. The session is recorded for the farmer, so he has it there in his filing cabinet on AgVisor Pro. He's got it there for reference, so he can go back to it, and Justin can get paid. So we've made that all work. I was talking to Steve Larocque the other day, and Steve said, "Man, this is perfect. I get called all the time from Australia for a whole bunch of stuff that I'm doing. Happy to help out, but I've just got no way to monetize my mind and my brain." And I think that this is really one of the things that's going on in agriculture right now is you would think that with the amount of Google out there, that the amount of information would just grow exponentially, and it is, but the amount of knowledge and wisdom does not grow correspondingly. So at the end of the day, I was trying to do some welding the other day, and I was trying to figure out what to do with this MIG welder. I went to three or four videos on YouTube. I know, scary. I went to the owner's manual, which is worse. And in the end, I would have gladly paid somebody $50 to just walk me through some of the nuances that I was trying to deal with. It would have been great just to have somebody instantaneously help me. So I hope that we're on to that. And we've profiled AgVisor Pro with some farm focus groups, and then also with the Power Farm groups. And I'm running 2 peer groups called the Power Farm groups. And so we profiled AgVisor Pro with Power Farm 1, which you're involved in, Terry, and also the newest Power Farm 2 group. They were profiled as well. And, the indication is, thumbs up. And I've taken it out to industry. Industry seems to be pretty interested in what I'm doing. I think I solved some problems for them, and we'll see. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. Some of the ideas that I really liked as well was the mental health concept, because I think that this is a growing issue. People are starting to get more open about talking about it, but it's definitely, with the pressures of everything that's going on today, today's world is becoming more of an issue. And I think that while there is resources out there like helplines, I just even think for myself, well, if I'm feeling really down or in a bad place, I don't know, am I going to go look up a helpline and phone somebody that I don't know, or maybe someone like Elaine Froze, who I do know is on there, or a couple other people. And in that moment, that instant, if I could connect instantly and say, hey, I'm just having a real tough time like this, with this, just need somebody to talk to. I think it's much more personal and would feel safer. I think that could go a long ways. And I love the idea of the SOS concept, because, hey, if you're hurt in the field and it is an emergency, like, do you call 911 first? Do you call your wife first? Who do you call? And then you got to try to explain the location, and you could be in shock or in a panic mode where you're not thinking clearly. So to be able to, hopefully simply enough, just hit an app and hit the SOS button, and that can go to 911, can go to every person that you set up on your farm team and the locations there. To me, that's a really cool little simple feature that could have a lot of value. So there's some cool stuff there.
Yeah, I think so. The SOS functionality we're building really is, at this point in time, is directly to your team. So you fell off the tractor, broke your leg, you hit the button, and it'll alert 4 or 5 people on your team to come to you right away. So that's what we're building there. I think that's cool. And just to be clear on the mental health side, we're going to work towards having true mental health professionals on the other end of the line. So let's say you're having a bad day, Terry, on the farm, and you really want to talk to somebody. The likelihood of you going to Langenberg, or the likelihood of you going to Russell or even to Yorkton, pretty small. You first of all, you don't know who to go to. You got to make an appointment, but that appointment could be 2 weeks into the future. You don't want to go to town. You're not going to pull your truck up in front of the mental health office in town because you're worried about what everybody's going to think or say. And so I'm hopeful that we can have the support of the industry to back this side of the equation, because I do need resources to help pull this together. But this is needed, whether it's ag more than ever. There are a number of organizations that are focusing in on creating awareness of mental health on the farm. It's real. The pressures are real. We're just human beings. And if AgVisor Pro could save the life of one farmer, make a difference in one farm family, I would think that this would be a huge success. And this is a way of doing the how. There's lots of people saying we have a problem, but what I'm trying to do is address the how do we fix the problem.
So yeah, that's really cool. Some really cool stuff. So one thing that I think about a lot is one of the reasons we're here right now today is because of us meeting through our relationship with Agri-Trend. And I was involved with Agri-Trend for 12 years with my consulting business. And in all honesty, for me, that was the first exposure to a very large network of extremely, extremely passionate professional people about agriculture. And it really changed, I believe, our whole family's viewpoint on agriculture too, because there is a lot of negativity at times. those kind of things. And to get connected with Agri-Trend and the amazing people that were in that group, to help learn and grow and push forward. It was just an amazing experience and opportunity for us, and has led to where we are with the farm and Aberhart Ag Solutions, and probably ultimately this podcast at the same time. So, I'd like you to maybe share a little bit what you feel was a special sauce in Agri-Trend and the transition that you just had, and just some reflection on that. I think a lot of people would be really interested to hear that story.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. I think that without doubt, one of the proudest things that I have done in the career in agriculture so far was being a member of the Agri-Trend network, providing the leadership that grew that family. And there's a lot that goes on to this story. We started out. I remember in the early days at Dan Sullivan's strategic coach that I go to. I literally remember putting a Palm Pilot on a piece of paper, and trying to imagine the things that could go, data pieces that could go into the Palm Pilot and come out of the Palm Pilot in terms of farm management systems. And as we progressed and launched and grew Agri-Data Solution, we did all of that and far more than I had imagined. Agri-Trend was founded in an era, as I mentioned, before there was Google, before email was really, really strong. And so in the early days of Agri-Trend, it really was Excel spreadsheets and fax forms and soil tests on paper, fax back and forth between people. And we began to build a system. The first thing that I did because of my training with Jerry Stoller, and that is I developed something called the 10-step soil interpretation process. It's to me still today, it's crazy that we have agronomists out there who cannot dissect a soil sample. They still depend on the crutch of the lab to tell them more or less what to put on to do a recommendation for a farmer. Well, that's really the first thing I did is I developed the 10-step soil interpretation process. We morphed that over time. I mean, Elston and guys like Doug Penny had input to refine that. But that whole initial process allowed us to teach you and farmers how to look at a soil sample, anybody's soil sample, and find out where the strengths and weaknesses were of the sample and the strengths and weaknesses of the soil. So we started off with that, and then every year, you as a farmer go through a cycle of activity to plant the crop. Again, planting the crop isn't an event. It's not like you wake up one day to, oh, I'm going to plant the crop. It's a process. It's a process that goes on through the course of the whole year. So we built all around this 10-step soil interpretation process. We built something called a system called the strategic crop plan. And it had activities almost in every month that an agri-coach would do with a farmer to get you ready for the planting season and after. And once we had that in position, we had to have a way to manage it. So that began the programming of Agri-Data on SQL and .NET, and then migrating that whole platform and building it. We always built it for online. We were in the cloud before there was a cloud. And then once we had that all in position, we were able to replicate that process, that strategic crop plan process, and the training. And we were able to replicate that through an Agri-Coach program. So that Agri-Coach program was all about agronomy and helping farmers to grow better crops. Those coaches, of which you are one, worked directly in the field with farmers, and you were backed by the data system, and you were backed by the senior coaches and master coaches and an administration that helped you do what you did. And as it evolved, we added on market coaches to help market grain, and we added on geo coaches for precision ag, and we added on farm business management coaches. And so with Agri-Trend, the total system was grow the crop, sell the crop, manage the money. It was all tied together. And of course, we began to put on events like the Farm Forum event that's still going on today through Glacier Farm Media. and the magazine that we published, the Ag Advanced Journal. So a lot of things happened in that 20 years that I'm very, very, very proud of. Yeah, lots of things.
Yeah, and so talk about the transition to Trimble, or the sale to Trimble, and I guess it's kind of what's led now to these new opportunities. Maybe it didn't feel like that at the time, but I think all of us in business and stuff sometimes go through these transitions, and sometimes maybe they don't always go exactly as you think during the time, right? But they also open up new doors and opportunities at the same time. If that's, I think that's stuff that we learned through Strategic Coach a bit too, right? So,
yeah. Well, it's interesting, Terry. That's absolutely a great question. I dedicated part of the dedication of the new book is to the Agri-Trend family, because what we built over those 20 years was amazing, and that legacy lives on. Because unlike a lot of companies that have employees, Agri-Trend's coaches were independent entrepreneurs, and so as we were growing Agri-Trend, my board of directors, and again, some advice for people: if you don't have an advisory board for your business, or you don't have a board of directors, get one. That's really, really important. I was the founder of Agri-Trend and the major shareholder of Agri-Trend. Had a number of shareholders that were in the network that were shareholders, but I reported myself as CEO to a board of directors, and it was an awesome board of directors. Rick Pattison and Peter Lacey and Kim McConnell and Ken Karwande, lawyer from Regina, and then Don Van Houweling, who is a John Deere dealer with 23 stores in Iowa. A great board of directors, and we were growing Agri-Trend at a pretty sharp pace. And when you're growing, everybody thinks that's great. Your business is growing, and you're really ramping up. And we were moving into the United States. But growth needs oxygen, and oxygen in terms of a company is cash. And as we were growing very rapidly into the United States, we became cash constrained. The other thing that was going on, Terry, is that our model was a 20-year-old model. It was a 15-year-old model, and that model was very humanistic, and it was a very expensive model to run. We had our administration people. We ran a lot of meetings. We had to do all kinds of in-field sessions. We had to support the senior coaches. We whether it was the logos for the trucks, or the signs for the fields, or the events, or the training, certification, all of that stuff. All of that was being done. All the administration, all the invoicing, all the collection, all of the money flow, and it's expensive. And so we were needing to get an injection of capital, and so the board suggested that we package up Agri-Trend and go to the venture marketplace and see if we could get an injection of $10 or $15 million to allow Agri-Trend to grow. And it was at that time, working with a Manhattan investment banker, that we locked eyes with Trimble. And a couple of interesting things about Agri-Trend is we never sold crop inputs. So people say that, we were selling fertilizer and chemical. We never did. We never received compensation for the movement of fertilizer, chemicals, or seed. We never sold equipment. We never bought grain. So we were really agnostic. And for us to work with a partner, some sort of a venture partner, we had to have somebody who was the same personality as us. And so it was during that time that we locked eyes with Trimble. And it was pretty interesting because Trimble is in the technology space in agriculture, but really had a fairly big opportunity in the area of farm data management. And they didn't really have any strategy for precision ag or agronomy inside of Trimble. And so I was working with the mergers and acquisition team, and a guy named Rob and Darren Howie did a lot of work, and we did a lot of diligence. And a small company like ours selling to a publicly traded Silicon Valley company is a lot of work. So we had to get through a lot of diligence, and it looked to me like that was a really good fit. Now, when I thought about if we were to become Trimble, is it good for our farmers? And I really, really felt that it was good for our farmers. I felt that it'd be good for our coaches. I felt it would be good for our employees, and I felt it would be good for our shareholders. And so the offer came and we negotiated a bit, and the board said, Rob, this is a good offer. This is a fair offer. And so we transacted. We sold Agri-Trend and AgriData and Agri-Trend aggregation to Trimble. And that happened in November of 2015. Again, I just completed my period in December of 18 here. So we did that, and I got to say that Trimble, a very honorable company. We had any hiccups that we had to deal with, we dealt with and worked through them. And so I give top notch to the management team, honorable, straightforward. Trimble has done an outstanding job with AgriData, and the AgriData platform, now Trimble Ag Software. You don't even know this, Terry, but apparently it's just been converted into Japanese now. So that platform that we built, Kevin Patterson and that programming team that they built that platform is now available in 15, 16 languages going around the world. And I knew that I couldn't do that, and it would take the muscle of a Trimble to be able to do that. On the other hand, I wish I would have done more diligence in terms of cultural fit between what Agri-Trend is and what Agri-Trend, our mission is, and how it would have fit inside of Trimble, because I think that we were ahead of Trimble. I think that we as an Agri-Trend organization could go to a field and either use biovegetation index maps to do zones, or use EM38 maps for electrical conductivity. We could develop zones and grids and then pull those together into recommendations for variable rate fertilizer and variable rate seed. And then we would develop that all into a script that would go on to a jump drive that had to go into a controller. And that's really where there was a disconnect. At the time, Trimble didn't have any variable rate capability. They couldn't regulate and vary 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different nutrients at the same time through any of the equipment that we were really running. And there was a gap. I think that was a gap between where we were at and where Trimble was at. And it created tension, because we wanted to be able to help move that technology in the field. And we did. Now, we moved a lot of John Deere variable rate seeders into the field. We moved a lot of variable rate planters into the field. Unfortunately, they weren't Trimble's. And so I think that began some soul searching inside their organization. And they've acquired Mueller since. So they are getting into that whole variable rate world, and are going to do it in a good way, again, starting over in Europe before it comes to North America. So that lag time created a gap in the business plan. And it just became obvious that Agri-Trend was not the right fit for Trimble at the time. And, for the record, if anybody out there from the Agri-Trend world is watching this, it grieves me that it didn't go the way I wanted it to go, because the plan was to take Agri-Trend globally through the Vantage dealer network. And that was always my plan. However, plans change, and that is with strategic coach. They teach us that. And so, Terry, to be really honest, I think I would have licked my wounds pretty hard for about 2 years as I watched what was going on. And I'm really proud of the Agri-Trend network. Like Elston Solberg and those guys have picked up a network that converses on agricultural problems called Earth, Dirt, Soil. So that's been taken care of. You and many of the other coaches have accelerated your agri-coaching business. The marketing guys have started up a couple marketing companies. So everybody's bright. Everybody, nobody is indispensable. I'm not indispensable, but I did grieve for a couple years, and then started to think about what impact could be made on the world. And I go back, Terry, to the work I do with Strategic Coach and the work I do with Peter Diamandis at Abundance 360. They challenge us to think about our moonshots. What could we do? So now that Agri-Trend is a part of my legacy, knowing what I know, about the strengths and weaknesses of that model, knowing what I know about farming and technology, what would be the next moves for Rob Saik? After the sale of Trimble, people said, "What are you going to do? Go golfing?" And I said, "Well, you don't know me very well." So that kind of leads it, Terry, to where we're at today in terms of what the opportunities are for DOT, for AgVisor Pro, for the Power Farm groups, for the book I'm writing. And I haven't even talked to you about spectroscopy experiments I'm running right now and stuff like that. So, yeah. So it's been a great career, and you look back on that 35 or 40 years of my career, I've been able to build a couple retail businesses and found a bunch of companies. And I look back at all those with a great amount of pride. So, but moving forward, build on that past, right?
It's really interesting. I think it's really cool that you shared that, Rob. I mean, for me, being part of that network, I don't think I've ever experienced anywhere the culture and the passion that was within that network with all the senior coaches and the coaches. And we had an incredible amount of fun and an incredible amount of passion. And that just inspired people to do amazing things. And I was very close to all this because I was very passionate about Agri-Trend. I was really involved in the work that we were doing as a group with the precision stuff. I was really close with you and many of the other senior coaches like Elston and all the guys. And it was really amazing. And I think that, the thing that made it so amazing was the fact that we were generally all independent. We weren't employees. But that also made it incredibly, incredibly hard to make changes. And I was always in the mindset sometimes that, you have to change. Change is constant. And if you don't change fast enough, things are just going to go sideways. And at some point, maybe, I just kind of seen that the growth was getting to a point where major things had to change. And for some people, maybe that was uncomfortable. And I think at times in business, it's really relating just back to being an entrepreneur and being able to see that sometimes the winds are changing, right? And if you don't recognize that and you try to hang on or keep paddling against the stream, so to speak, it just isn't maybe possible to carry that forward. And so I've seen, the people in our network, some that struggled with it, some that didn't. I seen the toll that, the emotional toll on you, and maybe things didn't go in certain areas the way that you hoped or wanted. But on the same hand, those things you learn from them, and we talked about this through some of that. And at the end of the day, you make those choices that you think are right at the time, and you hope for the best. But when you come out the other side, all of a sudden, now you learned a bunch from the experience. And it was interesting to see your transition from, getting kind of over where things went. And all of a sudden, a few months later, now you're starting to dig your heels into the next horizon, and the excitement gets going and all that stuff. So that was really, really cool. Really, really cool.
The world does not stand still. And again, we were at a point where the legacy model that we had created needed to change. I'm really excited about having the opportunity to come forward with some new ideas to serve the agricultural community, and the opportunity, Terry, with what we're doing with DOT and AgVisor Pro, have the opportunity to again change the lives of potentially billions of people. And again, back to Peter Diamandis, who challenges us on a moonshot about how do we structure something that potentially could change the lives of a billion people. I'm very excited about DOT. I think DOT could be $1 billion unicorn coming out of Regina, Saskatchewan. There is no guarantee that it will be, but it has a chance to be, and that's pretty rare for that sort of an idea to come out of the prairies. There's great companies that have come out of the prairies, but very few of them have been, $1 billion moonshots. And so we have a chance to do some things here right now that are really exciting for the future. So yeah. Anyway, as we wrap up the whole Agri-Trend thing, I just wanted to say that, I believe our legacy lives on. It lives on in all of those independent coaching businesses that are out there today. And I think that Agri-Trend significantly shifted the marketplace forward. When I started, there were very few consultants on the marketplace that I could think of. Today, there are lots. I think Agri-Trend was part of that. Farmer's Edge came on, about 7 years after Agri-Trend had started, maybe longer. And it was about that. And so we have all of this stuff happening today with Decisive Ag. We've got Decisive Farming and Crop Pro and all kinds of independent guys out there. Those guys that are working, all the guys and gals that are pushing forward. And it's exciting to see. I think that we, as an Agri-Trend network, moved agriculture forward in Western Canada and in Canada and North America far more than people will ever realize. And that makes me feel pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. It's really cool. And I think that kind of leads to another area that I have a lot of interest and passion in is just is all the coaching stuff, the strategic coach. I've had the honor and pleasure now of joining that group, and you've been in it for a long time. And I've seen working with you within Agri-Trend, the tools and the processes that you brought from coach to the team. I've seen the culture that you build. I've seen how you surrounded yourself with advisors. And a lot of that stuff, in all honesty, I just seen the value that it had and the action that it inspired in me being part of that group, and really took that and emulated a lot of those things within our own business, and created a lot of success with that. And now, going to strategic coach too. And you've been in strategic coach now for over 25 years. So tell us a little bit about why you're doing that and overall the struggles that you may have as an entrepreneur, and how a program like that has helped you do the things that you want to do.
Yeah, so I every 90 days I fly to Toronto and I review my life, my business life, my personal life. I review my life every 90 days by attending a program called Strategic Coach with a fellow by the name of Dan Sullivan. And I just started my 26th year. So that's over 100 flights to Toronto and back every 90 days. And if you're an entrepreneur or you're running a business, you are hit every day with all sorts of complexities that shake up your world. And I think that it's really important that every 90 days or so you slow down and take inventory of your life and try to reformulate your strategies and what you're going to do the next 90 days in the context of where do you want to go. So I know this may sound a little weird, Terry, but I started a plan when I was 40 years old, and I sketched out the next 100 years of my life. So I sketched out my life to the year 2100, which means I would be 140 years old. And I divided those 100 years into 4 25-year blocks. And if you divide those 4 25-year blocks into 90-day increments, over 100 years, every 90 days is 1%. So if I said I wanted to learn to speak Swahili, for example, well, that's ridiculous. You can't speak Swahili. Well, can I speak Swahili 1% better in 90 days than I did before? And over the course of 190 days, I'd be an expert, of course. So the whole idea of strategic coach is to be able to ground yourself every 90 days. And in life, Terry and Holden, you're going to be going through this too. There are times when you have great excitement and things are going really, really well. And then life crashes around you. Boom, things don't go so well. And whether
like every time I come home and tell them to clean the room.
whether it's a disease that hits your family that you have to deal with, or death, or divorce, or financial struggles, changing marketplace, China not taking canola. Every time the world hits you with these issues, it's important to slow down and take stock of your assets and figure out, based on a 3 or a 5 or a 10-year plan, what does this canola China issue mean to your farm, and what does it mean in the context of 3 and 5 years, and will it really be that big of a deal over the 3 or 5 years? The answer is absolutely yes or absolutely no. It depends on how you deal with that strategy. So strategic coach for me, Terry, again, through the ups and downs of life, you go to some strategic coach sessions and you cry, literally. And other strategic coach sessions, you go there and you're on top of the world because things are firing. Other strategic coach sessions you go to, you're broke, you're busted, and you don't know how you're going to make payroll in the next 90 days. And I've been there too. So it's been really good for me. So it's strategic coaches for entrepreneurs. And I don't care if you're a person listening to this that is or is not an entrepreneur. There are lots of good coaching systems out there. My advice is to find one that works for you and stick to it. Just stick to it. The tools work. I've integrated strategic coach into all parts of my life and every business I'm involved in, whether it's DOT or writing a new book or Power Farm Group or AgVisor Pro. Strategic coach is the foundation on which I build that company's strategies and culture. So there it is, Terry.
Yeah, I know, it's really cool. I think, the coach really too is it's a peer network as well. And one of the things that I always find is you go there, and a lot of times in business and personal life too, you feel like you're the only one facing these problems or dealing with these problems, right? And a lot of times I think we have in agriculture this mindset of, no one understands what it's like to farm or run a farm. It's different, right? But the thing that I find really amazing is there isn't a lot of people in agriculture that are in coach. A lot of it's many other different kinds of businesses, everything that you could think of. But the reality is everyone has basically the exact same set of problems. And everybody's dealing with the same thing, right? And a lot of other people have insight. And so it's really about the peer network too. And I think that's where, the value of the peer groups and stuff that you started. We've been part of a farm peer group. Strategic Coach is just an overall business peer group. And we've already formed some amazing relationships, friendships, and opportunities through that as well. So, and it's that time, like you say, you go there, you're unplugged from everything else for one day, and you just focus on the big picture. And I think a lot of times we get mirrored down in the day-to-day of everything going on, and it's hard to see the horizon, or it's hard to look back. And you talk about this a lot too. A lot of times as entrepreneurs, we're always walking towards the horizon, shooting for the horizon. It feels like we're never getting there because we're always setting new goals. But sometimes you got to take the time to stop. And that's what coach helps with too, to reflect back on the positive focus of success. And you look back and like, wow, we do this every year for the farm. We get the whole team in and everyone writes down all the things that we accomplished that year. And we end up with a list of like 50 things long. And we're like, wow, no wonder the odd day we feel a little tired. Like we did a whole bunch of crap and it was all like really good stuff. Right. So I think that's the real powerful part of all that.
Yeah. The lesson there, Terry, is that as entrepreneurs, you're always striving for the ideal. You want the ideal income stream. You want the ideal set of machinery. You want the ideal crop. You want the ideal herd of livestock. You want the ideal family. And if you always judge yourself by the ideal, you'll always fall short because it's like trying to reach the horizon. No matter how many days or how far you walk, the horizon just keeps moving on you. However, you need to stop and turn around and judge how far you've come. And that's why I like to every so often stop the team and really do a refresher on, okay, we're frustrated with what's not going on or not going right. Let's stop for a second and study what went right, what we did right, what went well, and how big is that list. And you're right, Terry, it's an extremely invigorating and energizing activity that most people don't do.
Well, and I'm just thinking about this 100-year plan. Like and I know that's something else that comes out of that, but that's really cool. I'm just thinking that's thinking about Holden. Like, are you thinking about your 100-year plan there yet? You'll be 100.
Yeah, Holden.
100 years.
How old are you going to live, Holden?
I don't know. It all depends on what I choose to do. What I choose to live my life.
Hey, how old do you think you're going to live till, Holden?
Probably somewhere in the 90s.
In the 90s?
The 90s, yeah. Well, you're wrong, because by the time you get to be our age, my age, you're going to be living a lot longer than 90, Holden. I would think you'd be wanting to get into your brain something about 110 or 120.
Well, let's get into a little bit of something that I'm really interested in as well, and something that you've got connected to is the Peter Diamandis group, the Abundance 360. I think for anybody that has a bit of a futuristic or interested in the type of technology and things that are coming down the pipe should look at that, maybe subscribe to the newsletter. You've been going to the conferences a bit. Why don't you just explain a little bit about that? And I know Holden and I watched the first 2 hours of the last Abundance conference remotely, and it's just mind-blowing the technologies that are coming out there that are real and happening right now that people don't even realize, right?
Yeah, again, this goes back to the strategic coach. So through strategic coach and Dan Sullivan, 52 of us got an opportunity about 6-7 years ago to go to Mountain View, California, which is in Silicon Valley, the home of Google. And we went to the Moffett Air Base, which is the home of Singularity University. Singularity University is founded by several people who had an eye to pull entrepreneurs together to basically talk technology and how it would shape the future. And two of the co-founders were Peter Diamandis and Ray Kurzweil. And if you've ever had a Kurzweil music synthesizer, that's Ray. Optical character recognition and flatbed scanning, that's Ray. Ray has so many inventions, and Ray's got a stellar report card in terms of predicting the future. He's now the head of engineering at Google. And together, Ray Kurzweil and Peter Diamandis had us for 2 days, 52 of us in a room, and they would do 1-hour sessions each on where technology was going. I was fortunate enough to be in that room. And after the first night, I went to my hotel room. I didn't sleep a wink. My brain just churned all night long. I woke up next morning. I wasn't tired. I went back to the session. I took 83 pages of notes in 2 days, and it changed my world. And the reason it changed my world is that all of a sudden I was exposed to this thinking, all of these technologies that are out there, and these people that were working on the technologies. And I was going, how is this going to impact agriculture? Genomic sequencing. We can sequence the human genome. Dr. Craig Ventnor, and I've had mine done since then, can do it. How will that change agriculture? 5G connectivity. How will that change agriculture? Machine learning, artificial intelligence, data, streaming, sensory devices. How will that change agriculture? And so I came back from there. I was the only agriculture person in the room. And I remember, Terry, coming back to you guys at the Agri-Trend network. And I was vibrating, and you guys are saying, what the hell is wrong with cycling? Something's wrong.
Pretty much, yeah.
But it really started to set us on a trajectory. And so since I've been involved with Peter Diamandis' Abundance 360. So in late January in Beverly Hills, he gathers 360 people together in a room, and you can tap in remotely so you can be part of it. But there's 360 of us in the room, and Peter will bring in the best thinkers in the room. For example, this year he brought in Dr. Kai-Fu Lee, who wrote the book AI Superpowers, China, Silicon Valley, and the Changing World Order. And if you want a good book to read to understand what's going on today, that was it. And Kai-Fu Lee was amazing. And anyways, I expose myself to this every year, and it helps me to shape the vision of where I think technology, the world, and agriculture needs to go. Hence the book, hence DOT, hence AgVisor Pro, all of that stuff.
Yeah, it's an amazing group to get connected into, and the things that are going on. I remember, Holden and I were watching some of the introduction there, and that 2 hours is just 2 hours of Peter Diamandis just sharing mind blowing things. And Holden and I were watching that, and one of them was the new Google Assistant, right? That can just call and book your hair appointment and talk back and forth. Oh, that day won't work. That day won't work. I remember Holden watching, and he's like, that they didn't even know they were talking to an AI, and it's amazing, the technology. And so this is where I see this. I believe these things, and I believe they happen quicker than most of us think they will, right? And that's why I think we have to be open to these things. And it's the stuff that's happening with longevity and technology is just it's amazing. So someone like Holden, I mean, you're going to have.
Hey, Holden. When you watch that Abundance 360, Holden, what are the things that jumped out at you? What were the exciting things? Can you remember it? What jumped out at you?
My favorite part was when they showed the virtual Google Assistant and they put her up on the screen, and she was like, "Hey, can you turn on my cameras?" And they did, and then she saw this guy wearing a tie, and he was like, and she said, "Oh, hey, nice tie there. You have a great day now, sir." I just thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I forgot about that part. That was pretty cool. So, I mean, and the one big theme that Peter talks about all the time is this moonshot, right? So explain a little bit about, I mean, you alluded to it before, but what is the moonshot? And he has got a little process to define your moonshot, right?
Yeah. So a moonshot is a big, hairy, audacious goal. And it's not something that just, that instantaneously drops on the table in front of you. It requires some thinking. But a couple of years ago, Terry, on May 2nd, 2017, I remember the day, I had an opportunity. I was invited to spend 6 hours with Bill Gates. And there was a handful of us that were in the room there. And the meeting was really about discussing agricultural technologies. I brought everything Agri-Trend and Agri-Data to show Bill Gates. And he had done a lot of research work on the people in the room. And the topic was really, how do we use technology to lift the poorest people in the planet, largely farmers, subsistence farmers, to a higher level of prosperity. And so we were there basically to collaborate and to share ideas with Bill Gates as to how that might happen, what we could contribute. And that day changed my life in a lot of ways, because I didn't have, at that moment, I didn't have a vision really of how I could change the lives of 1 billion people. And that's what Peter Diamandis talks about. Peter Diamandis talks about, how do we shape the lives of 1 billion people? Now I'm involved in several things that I think could do that. Again, sharing the thoughts about agriculture in a book or a podcast, trying to talk about GMOs and genetic engineering and how important that is, trying to reach that message into the urban marketplace. Because if you put GMOs and fertilizer, pesticides, and robotics to a vote today, it would be, to ban them or keep them, it would be ban, 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 ban. It'd be let's ban all technology associated with agriculture. And what you do is you condemn the world to poverty based on ignorance. And so we need to reach people. And the other thing going on is in broadacre agriculture, like your farm, Terry, they're not making more farmers. Holden and you are rare air. You're farming 15, 16,000 acres. It's probably going to get bigger. And the reason is that most people leave to go to the city. And that's just what's going on. So how do we create a support system for you people that are in the farm, remote and disparate? You're not connected in a city. How do we create connectivity to support you? That's another thought going through my head. And the other one, I've been giving this some thought. What do you think the most scarce resource is on the farm, Terry? If I was to ask you, what is the most, through the course of the planting season, the whole entire year of farming, what do you think the most important scarce resource is?
I've got to answer this right now. Well, my first thought goes to time. Just time. That's what I think about. Is time to. I wish I had more time to do the research, to spend in the field, to analyze. We've got so much data to analyze it and to make. I know there's. Every time I've always taken the time to sit down and make a presentation for a meeting or a conference and analyze the data, I usually find some really cool, amazing insights and like, wow, I didn't really even know this was here. So that's one thing that for me personally is just having the resources and the ability to do more of that.
If you're a subsistence farmer in Nigeria growing cassava that's being attacked by a disease, what do you think your most scarce resource is at that moment?
Information. Access to information.
Yeah. I think that as we see agriculture move into the future, whether you're a small landholder in Uganda, just running a half an acre farm, or you're a Terry Aberhart running 15,000, or somebody running 100,000 acre farming operation, I think the thing that is most scarce on a farm is information when you need it. And I wouldn't even say information because you can Google anything. It's just more information, more confusing. I think what you really need is access to knowledge and wisdom when you need it. So I may be totally out on this. I may be totally out to lunch, but after watching and thinking about this for a long time, I believe the moonshot that we're creating is to shrink time and space to connect experts with farmers in real time to solve problems by stretching their brains and not their bodies. And so that's what I see. I could be totally wrong, been wrong before, but I think that the most scarce resource on a farm today is an answer to a question when you need it right now.
Well, that's really cool. I mean, I think that's why you added the tagline of Answers Now, right, on AgVisor Pro. And I think maybe just to finish off the theme of moonshots, Holden, I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about what your moonshot would be, and maybe you could share that from the moon there on your iPad. But for me, I've thought about this a little bit, and it's probably going to change. It's not really defined, but it really comes down to the theme of our farm growing our future. And the theme of this podcast really is just about, for me, I want to do things that help change agriculture in a positive way to benefit not only our family and the next generation, but people around the world. That's my ultimate goal, is just to continue to do things and share knowledge and hopefully be part of some of these things that help improve that from a global scale. That's something that before we go to Holden, I think it's fair for me to say this, but Zarvio has got a program where they do spraying of crops according to biovegetation maps. Well, Zarvio didn't invent that. That was invented by Terry Aberhart and working with Warren Bills and the guys at Agri-Trend. And we have lots of people taking credit for it, but we work with Dr. Alex Melnichuk on pulling together the biovegetation index maps. We pulled those maps out of Belarus. We would work on getting that information for in-season crop density on your farm, on the density of canola, and then we would prescribe fungicides either at the full rate or none, depending on the density of the crop. And today that was taken to Bayer digital campaign that those guys worked on and developed. And today that has migrated over to Zarvio. And so that whole thing really in my mind, started on your farm. So credit to you. There's an example
of you making an impact to millions of people around the planet, if not billions someday, Terry. And I think it should be on the record that it started on your farm.
Well, thanks for that clarification, Rob. Now that'll be cemented in time. I'll just have to everyone to refer to this podcast. But yeah, it's cool. I think that's one of the things that most of us don't realize what we can do. And it's all part of the goal setting process, right? And I've always believed that when you surround yourself with amazing people, you can do amazing things. And it's not something that we did on our own, but it definitely was something that we did working with a great group of people, and it's pretty cool. So yeah, Holden, what do you got there? What's your
moonshot
at 11 years old?
Can you say that again? You were kind of lagging it.
What's your moonshot? What's your big goal at the moment for your life?
My big goal is, I don't really know. I don't really have one right now.
Need some time to think about it, hey?
Yeah.
Maybe
well, he's only 11. We'll give him until he's 13.
Yeah,
so
12 maybe.
We'll revisit this with you, Holden.
If you don't have a life-changing moonshot by the time you're 12, that's going to change the world. You got to think about where you're going with your life there, buddy. Cool. So, I mean, another thing that, probably a lot of people know about you, but a lot of people don't, is your alter alias, Steve Stubblejumski. And I think we're curious to hear about the beginnings of Steve and how that got started and where that all came from.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to entertain hundreds and hundreds of rural audiences as my alter ego, Steve Stubblejumski. Steve was, we had a fertilizer dealership, Randy Sasky and I did, in Two Hills, Alberta. And we decided that on opening day, well, the day before, we were trying to figure out how to open up our dealership at the pancake breakfast. Can't make up this stuff. So we were drinking, and Steve's mom was a half case of Coors, and his dad was a bottle of CC. And we had this floppy hat that I put on, and I'm Ukrainian, so I was able to use the Ukrainian accent that Steve Stubblejumski has, like that. And for the opening of Agri-Tech Farm Supply, anyway, your Mayor Shabuinka, you can't make up that name, Mayor Shabuinka at Two Hills, which is where Double Bumps is, was cutting the ribbon with Randy and Harvey on the stage, and I burst in as Steve Stubblejumski and wrecked our own grand opening, and farmers laughed like hell, and that began a career in rural comedy. So I've entertained, like I said, hundreds of crowds, and I don't do it very often anymore. I think I do it rarely, but I do have a big gig coming up next year in Saskatchewan, Terry.
Oh, really? Where's that?
Big gig. I was the first, Steve Stubblejumski was the first entertainer at the Lemberg Agri Dinner. It's now 25 years old, and they've asked Steve to come back for a third time. Steve Stubblejumski, three times at the Lemberg Agri Dinner. So I think I might do that.
It's funny. I was talking to Holden and I said, you should ask Rob about Steve Stubblejumski. And he's like, who's that? Who's, how? And he was struggling with how to pronounce it. But anyways, why don't you share with us one of your favorite Steve Stubblejumski jokes or short routines there?
Okay, really tough. You should have told me this, Terry.
Holden hasn't experienced any of this yet, so he needs to see some of this flavor. For you always do it off the cuff.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. So Steve would say that if a man is alone in the forest and he says something, and there's no woman there to hear him, is he still wrong? There's just a little short one.
There's some good ones there. Some good songs that Steve sings to once in a while. So that's a bit of fun. So, I mean, a lot of people know a lot about you, Rob. You're a very open guy, like to share a lot of things, but what's something that you'd want to share that probably nobody knows about you?
Okay. It would be something that drives me, and that would be a feeling that it's never really good enough. That I haven't done enough yet. I mean, Lori watches me work, and I'm like working at DOT every day, working at writing the book. The other day, I put in 18 hours on the book, and the launch of AgVisor Pro. And a lot of times she thinks like you're just crazy. Like, why you don't have to do this? You don't have to work at all if you don't want to. But why do you do this? And I do it because I see it, and to me, I have the ability to do something, and if it remains undone, I feel like I haven't contributed. So it comes from a space of insecurity. Really, I think no matter how successful I've been, I always think about is it good enough? Is it enough yet? I'm sure it is, but it's somewhere inside of me. Is a desire to not leave anything on the table. So at the end of my life, which Lord willing will still be a long time, because technology allows me to think that way. I mean, I'm 59 years old, and I'm just ramping up. And a lot of people are retiring and stuff like that, and good for them. I have no problem with that, but I believe that my lifespan will be well in excess of 100 years. And if you even call it 120 years, I'm not even halfway through yet. So to hang up the spurs when I've got all of this knowledge and all these contacts and all this information about agriculture in my head, I think that would be squandering resources. And Dan Sullivan's got a great saying. He says that if you stop using your parts, if you stop using the parts that nature gave you, you stop using the parts, then Mother Nature will just start asking for her parts back. And so there'll be, illnesses and things that happen. And I've been thankfully very healthy. Everybody's got some chassis issues with shoulders or stuff, but that would be it, Terry. I think that people would think that, been there, done that, done it all. And I'm going, nope. I think that there's so much more yet to do. And I've got the resources, the energy, the talent, the connections, the skills, the understanding to do it. And if I don't do it, then I think I've left stuff on the table that should be done.
That's an amazing insight or thought that you shared there. I mean, I was expecting something like you were a champion Ukrainian dancer or something like that nobody would know. But I think that's really cool, because I was actually going to ask you a little bit about what drives you, right? And I think that's just was really amazing to hear you talk about that, because ultimately I think a lot of really successful entrepreneurs or serial entrepreneurs have this incredible drive, have this incredible stamina. And I seen that in you, working with you. And even now, and people would ask, like, why do you want to keep doing this? Why do you want to work till 2:00 at night, right? Writing a book or whatever, when you don't have to at 59 years old or whatever it may be. And I think a lot of, deep down inside, probably a lot of entrepreneurs have that same feeling where, not that it's not enough, but you feel like you've never maybe reached your full potential, and you could do more. And if you can do more, and that's helpful to other people, you feel this urge or obligation to keep going forward, right? So I think we lost Rob there for a second. I don't know if he's going to reconnect. What do you think there, Holden?
I think this is a great concert.
I see. Are you still there, Rob, or did we lose you?
I think we lost him dead.
We'll just throw him a quick text here, see if he's coming back on. Well, this is a first for that. Losing our guest speaker. What do we do now? You gotta do some improv to keep the conversation going.
I don't know. Just trying to find a decent, nice picture. Could go in the background. I think I saw one before. Oh, yep, here it is. Perfect.
So you thinking about as we're getting close to wrapping up here, some last questions that we want to ask Rob when he comes back on?
You guys got me again?
Yeah, we got you again. We lost you there for a minute, so I don't know what happened there, but
well, Lori called me. Zoom kicked off when the phone call came in, so I'm not sure why that happened. But anyways,
no problem. No problem. We just had a deep discussion about you while you were gone. Yeah, so you've done a lot of things. You've been involved in a lot of businesses, and you're working with a lot of different people on whether it's acting on the board or working with Alberta Innovates. I know the last time I was up with you at your place there, we traveled to some of these meetings and stuff. And so I just curious, as advice to other farmers out there, other agronomists, other entrepreneurs generally, what's the top 3 things you would say to anybody that you need to think about and leverage to be successful?
Well, technology comes to mind as a real opportunity, a real threat. Every year I go to Abundance, and so I'm as plugged in as anybody is around what's going on with respect to technology. And this year in particular, at the end of Sunday, which is the first day, I just sat back in my chair and it was like hair straight back. And I'm plugged in, and I can't believe how fast things are moving. So I think for farmers that are intent on playing the long-term game, I think that connecting and having a technology strategy attached to your farm is very, very important. I think you need to have a technology play. I know that places like Olds College and so forth are starting to develop curriculum called tech agronomists, and those are going to be important people for your farming operation. I think that a coaching and a mentorship, a coaching type of program for you as a business owner is critical. So you need to surround yourself with an advisory board. You need to surround yourself with a group of people who can help tell you what you're not seeing, and maybe help devise strategy to help you skate where the puck is going to be, like a Gretzky move. And I think that's important. I think it's important you slow down periodically to work on your business rather than just in your business all the time. Those are a couple of things, Terry, that come to mind right away. Yep.
So how do you slow down? I know you're one of the people that I know that has so much going on. What do you do to unplug? What do you do to free up some time and space, clear your mind and get refocused?
Undoubtedly, my favorite activity is sailing. So I have a sailboat called the Prairie Oyster, and if I can be on the water, then that sailing activity is number one, because it's occupying my mind and allowing me to do something totally different than work. I like motorcycle driving. I was supposed to go a motorcycle ride today, but great news is it's raining today, so that won't happen. Lori and I, we enjoy traveling. We're going to go to a hike here right away, spend a little bit of time on Vancouver Island. I've never been to Tofino and Namao and Nanaimo. Yeah, the mail bars. Anyway, I've never been to those places, and I do like travel very much. So, in fact, one of the things I think we might do, Terry, is we might pull together a trip next year again in early March, maybe go to Chile with a bunch of farmers and start in Chile, go across the mountains, sample some wine in Mendoza, and end up at that Agro Expo show in Rosario, Argentina, before we leave from Buenos Aires. So I think we'll line up another. That'll be the third one now, third farm tour. I think we'll do that through Chile and Argentina. So I like to travel and really, really enjoy spending time with friends.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, if there is anybody listening that's interested in that, I've been on 2 of those tours to Argentina and Brazil, and honestly, some of the most fun I've had. And when you can travel along with a group of like-minded people and other farmers and go see some sites, have some fun, and see and learn about agriculture right from people that got boots in the ground and live there. I mean, it just was an awesome experience. And I always remember, especially the first one when we went to Argentina there, and it just kind of was a real experience where you look back and think about how far you come. And we had just traveled to Robert Peretti's farm, famous zero-till guy there, and he really wanted to show us a 20-year field plot of zero-till with all the worms. But I convinced you and Elston to take us where they were running the combine, so I could drive the combine in corn in Argentina. This was a big bucket list of mine. I never combined corn before, and so you guys convinced him to do that, and I drove this combine. It was just a really amazing experience. And we were sitting in the back of the car bombing down this dirt road afterwards in the middle of Argentina, drinking a beer or something, I believe. And you just looked at me and you just said, hey, like 6-7 years ago when you joined Agri-Trend, could you have ever imagined we'd be driving down this dirt road in Argentina, just coming from this cornfield and whatever? And I was just like, absolutely no way. It was just amazing. I remember that experience. So
yeah, that was fun. Yeah, there's lots to be done yet, and lots that we in Western Canada are going to do to influence the world. And as we look towards a population of, call it 9.6 to 10 billion people by 2020, the next 30 years are going to be real critical years and real good opportunity years for us if the fundamentals play out the way I think they are. So hold on tight. We've got a long way to go.
That's really cool. So Holden, you got any questions for Rob?
Yeah. What was the coolest thing you've ever seen in all your travels?
Oh, the coolest thing I've ever seen in all my travels. Well, let's see here. That's a great question, Holden. I think we had some time this last year in the Galapagos, and so we were able to see a lot of really cool plants and animals in the Galapagos. But I think the coolest experience I had was hiking the Inca Trail, and at 3:30 in the morning, they got us up, and we got to crest, I think it was called Dead Woman's Pass. And we stood there and on top of this mountain and watched the sunrise behind Machu Picchu. And you saw Machu Picchu just come to light with the dawn, the sun rising. I think that's one of the coolest things that I've ever seen. That was pretty cool. Thanks for the question.
You're welcome.
That's really cool. Yeah, I know. I mean, some of the stories that you talk about, and I mean, I just had the opportunity to go to Ukraine and Russia. I mean, it was in the wintertime there and whatnot, but just pretty unbelievable farming operations over there. Huge scale, 1 million acre farms. And I remember you talking a lot about too, one of the most advanced farms you've ever been on was over in the Ukraine, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. That was a farming operation called Druzhba Nova, which is New Friends. And Druzhba Nova's farming operation, going from memory here, I think it was 50,000 hectares or so. And it was undoubtedly the most agronomically advanced farming operation I visited anywhere in the world. They even had the ability to track the amount of residue or the trash left after the combining. And they were layering on broadcast liquid UAN or broadcast liquid nitrogen fertilizer on the trash according to the trash volume to break down the trash for next year's crops. And I'm going, holy cow, nobody is doing that anywhere else. So they had a lot of sophistication in their operation, and we should not underestimate the power. I mean, they struggle with geopolitical instability, granted, but there are smart people all over the planet. We should never take an approach where we think we're king of the hill, because there are really bright people all over the world working in agriculture. The advantage we have is that we have a stable political I think we have a stable political system. I don't know if it's Trudeau, but anyways, we have a stable political system that allows us to do longer range plans. Places like Argentina is hampered because everything is based on a 1-year lease. That does not lend itself to long-term thinking. So we're in a good spot. The other thing, as a legacy of the Canadian Wheat Board, is we have all of this grain storage all over Canada that allows us to do segregation of our grains. And I think we should be taking advantage of that. And there are ways to do that, I think, going into the future. It's one of the things that I'm thinking about, harnessing that segregation capability to be able to sell attributes from our crops directly to consumers. I think that'll be an opportunity for us too.
Awesome. Well, I think we're just about ready to wrap up. One thing I just wanted to finish off quickly is I see, my laptop's down to 6% here anyway, so it might be time to go. But we always talk a lot about the future and all those exciting things. But I think sometimes it's cool to celebrate the past and their heritage. And I think about the old time Harvest for Hunger, when we had all those old thrashing machines out there, and they had that little bucket on the grain elevator, it would measure every little bushel of grain, and it's actually a much more accurate measurement of yield or grain going across than we even have in our yield monitors in today, like 100 years later. But I know you got a pretty cool story about a memory of your early days of farming too.
Yeah, are you talking about the Field Marshal tractor?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so my first tractor was a circa 1947 Field Marshal open cab tractor. I don't know why Dad had it on the farm, but you would, at the front, it had one big cylinder, and you would light the blotter paper and put it into a holding device that screwed into the cylinder on the front end. And then you adjusted the flywheel to a certain notch on the tractor. And then you grabbed a shotgun shell. It was full of gunpowder, and screwed that into a device on the side of the tractor. And then you grab a hammer and you'd hit the firing pin of that shotgun shell. The shotgun shell would blast off. It would turn the flywheel, and hopefully the kerosene would light on fire with the blotter paper, and then big smoke rings would come out of the frickin' Field Marshal. And I spent hours on that frickin' tractor until the casting broke on the steering mechanism, and I was glad to be done with that. But so that's how old I am, folks.
Well, I don't think Holden has any of these old time stories yet. He might have to get a few more seasons on him to be able to talk about back in the day about his first farming experiences. But yeah, it was so awesome to have you on the podcast. We covered a lot of really cool things, and just so excited to see where things are going to go in the next few years. And I'm sure we'll be touching back again in the future. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Holden, and looking forward to the next time.
We'll see you all at Ag in Motion, at the Old Smart Show, August 13th and 14th, and at Farm Forum event this next December, and on the road. Thanks, Terry, for doing this.
Cool. Have a good day.
You have a good day, too. See you, Holden.